Welcome to today's story, a powerful journey of self-discovery and resilience. When Layla Simmons, a young woman from a traditional small town, meets Emma Brooks, a bold art teacher with big ideas, her world begins to shift. Emma challenges Layla to think beyond the life expected of her, sparking a clash between ambition and tradition. As Layla starts to embrace her own voice, she faces growing pressure from her family and friends to fall back in line. But when Emma's influence is suddenly taken away, Layla's left to decide. Will she follow the path she's been given or forge her own? If you're ready for a story about courage and finding your purpose, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring journeys like this one. And drop a comment below. What would you do in Layla's shoes? Let's jump in! Emma Brooks stood at the threshold of her new classroom, inhaling a deep breath. Her gaze swept over the room, appreciating the sunlight streaming in through the high windows, casting a gentle glow on the worn desks and the blank whiteboard. There was a stillness in the room, an inviting silence filled with possibility, and Emma was determined to bring life to it. Emma had accepted this job not just to teach art, but to ignite something more in her students. She had grown up surrounded by vivid colors and bold ideas, inspired by teachers who encouraged her to question and think. This was what she wanted to offer her students, a space to explore their own voices, to see art as more than assignments or grades. As students began filing in, Emma's optimism remained steady, but she noticed their curious glances, the quick exchanges and murmurs as they sized her up. Some students exchanged eye rolls, others simply turned back to their phones, uninterested. Emma's warm smile faltered just a little, but she pushed it aside, welcoming each student as they entered. "Good morning? Please take a seat. We're going to start the year with something new," she said, trying to project confidence. "Art is more than what's in your textbooks. It's about how you see the world. I want to know what inspires you. Why are you here?" Silence. A few students exchanged puzzled glances, while others just shrugged. Emma shifted, undeterred. "Well then, let's start with something I'm sure you've studied," she continued, holding up a print of Van Gogh's Starry Night. "Who can tell me about this piece?" A girl in the front row, blonde hair neatly braided, raised her hand. "That's Starry Night by Van Gogh, painted in 1889. Post-Impressionist style," she recited, almost robotically. Her voice lacked any personal insight, as if she was reading a description straight from a textbook. "Yes, very good," Emma replied, trying to mask her disappointment. "But tell me, what do you see when you look at it?" The girl blinked, looking taken aback. She shrugged. "I don't know. A night sky?" The boy next to her laughed, muttering, "It's just a bunch of swirls and stars. What's there to see?" A few other students chuckled, and Emma felt a pang. They were so used to facts, to memorizing and regurgitating answers. But she smiled through it. "Art isn't just about memorizing details," she said, her tone patient but firm. "It's about discovering what it means to you personally. Don't be afraid to have your own thoughts." The students exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to respond to this approach. Later that day, Emma found herself in the faculty lounge, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee. She had hoped her first class would feel like an inspiring exchange of ideas. Instead, it had left her drained, unsettled by the students' resistance. She wondered if she had misjudged the readiness of this community for her approach. "First day jitters?" a voice interrupted her thoughts. Emma looked up to see Principal Gary Landon standing beside her, smiling kindly. "Something like that," Emma replied with a small laugh. "They're bright, but it's like they've been taught to only repeat what they've read." Gary nodded sympathetically. "Our students are, let's say, very disciplined academically. They're top students, but they've been encouraged to prioritize high marks over independent thinking. You'll find they respond better to structure and, well, tradition." Emma sensed the gentle warning behind his words, but she nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, I'm here to teach them more than what's on a curriculum page. Art is supposed to challenge the way we see the world." Gary's smile faded a bit, his brow furrowing. "Just be careful not to push too hard, Emma. Give them time to adjust. They're used to a certain way of doing things here. Emma thanked him, but the conversation lingered in her mind. Was she expecting too much? Or was it possible that her students had never been asked to explore ideas outside the lines? Either way, Emma felt more determined than ever to find a way to reach them. The following day, Emma came prepared with a different strategy. Instead of starting with a well-known painting, she printed an abstract piece by a lesser-known artist, one that wasn't in any of the students' textbooks. She pinned it to the whiteboard before the students arrived, the colors vibrant and swirling in unusual patterns. "Good morning," she began as the students filed in, casting wary glances at the unfamiliar painting. "This is today's focus. I want you to take a moment and write down your immediate impressions. Don't think about what the right answer is. Just describe what you feel, what you think about it." Some students groaned. Others looked confused. Emma watched as they tentatively picked up their pens and began to write. She could see the hesitation, the resistance, but there was also a flicker of curiosity. When the time was up, she asked them to share. One boy raised his hand slowly. "It kind of reminds me of when I look at reflections in puddles. You know, after it rains, everything's sort of warped and blurry." Emma smiled, nodding encouragingly. "Yes, exactly. That's your perspective, your own voice. Art is meant to resonate with each person differently." Another girl raised her hand, her voice quiet but eager. "The colors, they're almost chaotic. It feels unsettling, like something that doesn't fit but is still beautiful." Emma beamed, feeling a thrill of hope. "Yes, that's the idea. Art can be unsettling. It can be chaotic and strange, and it's okay to feel that. Art doesn't always have to be about comfort." A few students were listening more closely now, their pens poised. Emma felt a spark of connection. She knew that this was only a small breakthrough, that it would take much more to truly reach them. But for the first time, she felt they were beginning to understand. As the class ended and students began filing out, Emma felt a small sense of victory. But as soon as she stepped into the hallway, she overheard a group of students whispering, "I don't know what her deal is," one of them muttered. "Why's she acting like art is supposed to be so complicated?" "Yeah," another chimed in. "She's probably just trying to seem smart because she's new. Doesn't make her right." Emma's heart sank, but she kept walking, head held high. She reminded herself that change was slow, and resistance was a part of growth. But deep down, she wondered if she would be able to make a lasting impact here, or if she would always be seen as an outsider. She took a breath, steadying herself, and resolved to keep going. One class, one conversation at a time, she would show them the power of seeing the world through their own eyes. The next day, Emma entered the classroom with renewed determination. She had spent the night preparing something she hoped would spark curiosity and challenge the students to look beyond what they already knew. "Today we're doing things a bit differently," Emma announced, holding up a printed photograph of an abstract sculpture, a piece that was unlisted in the school's curriculum. The students exchanged curious looks. "I want each of you to take a close look at this piece and jot down your first impressions. But I'm not interested in facts or a textbook summary. Tell me what you feel, what thoughts or images this sculpture brings to mind." The students stared at her, some confused, others hesitant. One by one, they began to write, pens hovering uncertainly over their notebooks. Emma watched them, noticing the mixture of curiosity and skepticism in their expressions. After a few minutes, she called on a student named Ben. Ben mumbled, looking around nervously. "It kind of reminds me of a tree, but not like a real tree. More like something twisted and out of control." Emma's face lit up. "Yes, exactly. Art doesn't have to be realistic to resonate. Sometimes it just taps into something deeper, something unstructured. It's about how it makes you feel." As Emma spoke, she noticed a subtle shift in some of the students' faces. They were listening, if only reluctantly, and Emma felt encouraged by this small opening. After class, Emma noticed a group of students lingering near the lockers. She recognized Sarah and Laura among them, along with a few others who had seemed openly resistant in class. "I just don't get what she's trying to do," Sarah said, frowning. "It's like she thinks she knows better than us, because she's from some city school or something. Right, Laura agreed, crossing her arms. All this talk about feeling and thinking outside the box. Oh, what's wrong with learning facts? Why do we need to make it so complicated? Emma felt a pang as she listened, but she forced herself to keep walking, her expression calm. Their skepticism hurt, but it also reminded her that change took time. Later that afternoon, Emma was called to Principal Gary Landon's office. She braced herself, sensing that this meeting would be about her unconventional teaching methods. "Emma, I wanted to check in and see how you're settling in," Gary began, his voice amiable but tinged with a hint of caution. "It's been a bit of a challenge," Emma admitted, her voice steady. "The students here are bright, but they've been trained to think in one way. I'm trying to show them that there's more to art and to life than memorization." Gary nodded slowly, leaning back in his chair. "I understand your approach, Emma, and I appreciate your passion. But this school has a long-standing tradition of academic excellence. Parents and the community expect results. Sometimes students feel more comfortable within certain boundaries." Emma's heart sank a little. "Are you asking me to change my teaching style?" "Not exactly," Gary replied. "But try to ease them into it, all right? Give them time to adjust." Emma nodded, keeping her disappointment hidden. She respected Gary's position, but she wasn't ready to give up on her vision. The conversation only strengthened her resolve to guide her students beyond the familiar. Emma walked into her next class carrying a new artwork, a vibrant collage that blended colors and shapes in a chaotic, almost dreamlike pattern. She pinned it to the board, noting the students' curious expressions as they examined the unfamiliar image. "Today, I want you to look at this piece and tell me what you think it means," Emma said, her tone light but purposeful. "Remember, there's no right answer here. Just tell me what you see." At first, the students hesitated, glancing around as if searching for clues. Then, Layla raised her hand, her voice quiet but confident. "It's kind of like a puzzle," she began, her cheeks flushing slightly. "All the pieces look random, but they're still connected. Somehow. Like, they're part of a bigger picture." Emma smiled, nodding. "That's exactly it, Layla. Art is often like a puzzle. Sometimes it doesn't make sense right away, but if you look closer, you can find connections." "Thank you for sharing that." Encouraged by Layla's answer, a few more students offered hesitant interpretations. As they shared their ideas, Emma could see glimpses of open-mindedness, small cracks in the wall of resistance. It wasn't a complete breakthrough, but it was a start. After class, Layla lingered, gathering her things slowly as the other students filed out. Emma watched her, sensing that she wanted to talk. "Ms. Brooks," Layla began hesitantly, "I've been thinking about what you said about finding our own voices. It's interesting, but around here, everyone just expects certain things from us." Emma nodded, listening intently. "What kind of expectations?" Layla glanced at the empty doorway as if to ensure no one was listening. "You know, things like marriage, family. A lot of girls here just want to finish school and find a good husband. That's kind of the tradition." Emma felt a mix of frustration and empathy. She knew how ingrained these expectations could be, especially in a community that valued tradition. "Layla, you're an intelligent, talented young woman. Don't feel pressured to choose just one path. You can build a life that's meaningful for you." Layla looked uncertain, but there was a spark of curiosity in her eyes. "You really think so?" "I do," Emma said firmly. "And if there's anything I can do to help, I'm here." Layla nodded, smiling softly. "Thanks, Miss Brooks." As Layla left, Emma felt a surge of hope. It was small, but this conversation showed that maybe, just maybe, her words were beginning to sink in. The next day, Emma noticed Layla sitting alone in the cafeteria, her usual group of friends conspicuously absent. Sensing tension, Emma made her way over to the table. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, and Layla looked up with a faint smile, nodding. "They're upset with me," Layla admitted quietly. "Some of the girls think I'm changing too much. They don't like that I'm listening to your ideas." Emma felt a pang of sympathy. "I know it's hard, Layla, but remember, learning to think for yourself is part of growing." It's not about disrespecting tradition, it's about finding out who you are. Layla nodded, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes I feel like I'm caught between two worlds. But I want to know more, even if it means standing out. Emma smiled, pride swelling within her. That's incredibly brave, Layla. And remember, you're not alone. I'm here to support you. As Emma watched Layla's confidence grow, she felt that her efforts were finally beginning to take root, even if only in small, quiet ways. The following day, Emma entered the faculty lounge to find a copy of the school's weekly newsletter on the table, opened to an article titled, "Our School's Values Under Threat?" As she read, her heart sank. The article criticized her teaching style, accusing her of challenging the school's values and influencing students to question their traditional roles. The article didn't mention Emma by name, but it was clear enough whom it targeted. Principal Landon passed by, catching sight of Emma reading the piece. His expression was sympathetic but tinged with caution. "Emma, this isn't a formal complaint, but some people are concerned." Emma took a deep breath, feeling both determined and weary. "I'm not here to disrupt values, Gary. I'm just here to help my students think independently. Isn't that what education is supposed to be about?" Gary sighed. "Just tread carefully, all right? You're making waves, and that can be unsettling." Emma left the faculty lounge with a heavy heart, feeling the weight of the resistance pressing in from all sides. But despite the backlash, she resolved not to give up. She had seen a spark in students like Layla, a hunger for something beyond the familiar. And for them, she would keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. On a Friday morning, Emma arrived early to set up her next lesson. Instead of pulling out textbook examples, she filled the board with images of art that broke conventions, installations made from recycled material, street murals from activist groups, and interactive pieces inviting viewer engagement. She wanted her students to see that art was more than something bound by rules. When the students entered, their reactions ranged from surprise to skepticism. "Today, we're going to talk about art that doesn't fit the mold," Emma began, gesturing to the array on the board. "Each of these pieces challenges what we think art should be. I want you to choose one that resonates with you and, for next week, create your own piece inspired by it. It could be a drawing, a short poem, even something as simple as a photograph. Just show me how it makes you feel." A murmur of uncertainty passed through the class. Sarah raised her hand, frowning. "But this isn't really in the curriculum, is it?" Emma shook her head, smiling. "Not officially, no. But the goal here is to discover that art doesn't have to be confined. Think of this as an experiment in personal expression." Layla, who had been quiet until now, raised her hand. "So, it doesn't have to be perfect?" Emma's smile widened. "Exactly, Layla. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be you." As class went on, Emma felt hopeful. She noticed a few students, Layla included, who seemed genuinely interested, despite the skepticism from others. This was the first time Emma sensed they were beginning to understand her vision. That afternoon, Emma noticed Layla eating lunch alone in the courtyard, her notebook open beside her. Layla looked up as Emma approached, her face lighting up. "Ms. Brooks," Layla greeted her. "I was just trying to brainstorm ideas for the project. I don't know why, but I actually feel inspired." Emma smiled, settling onto the bench next to her. "I'm glad to hear that. It's a brave thing to put a piece of yourself into something, especially when others might not understand." Layla nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's weird, though. Some of the girls, they think I'm getting too influenced by your ideas. They don't get why I'm so interested in this project." Emma's smile softened. "It's all right if not everyone understands, Layla. Sometimes when we grow, it makes others uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong." Layla sighed, looking down at her notebook. "I hope so. It feels right, somehow. But I don't want to lose my friends either." Emma placed a gentle hand on Layla's shoulder. "You'll find a balance. It's not about leaving anyone behind. It's about finding a way to be true to yourself." Later that week, during lunch, Layla found herself cornered by Sarah and Laura, who were visibly annoyed. Sarah crossed her arms, her tone sharp. "So, you're really doing that weird art project Ms. Brooks assigned?" Layla shifted uncomfortably, glancing down. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's not that big of a deal. But it kind of is, Laura interjected, her voice critical. It's like you're just doing whatever she says, even when it goes against everything we're taught. Layla felt a pang of guilt, but held her ground. I don't see anything wrong with trying something new. Ms. Brooks just wants us to think for ourselves. Laura scoffed. Sure, but what's wrong with the way things are? We've always learned this way, and we're doing fine. It feels like she's trying to change everything. Layla didn't reply, but her resolve wavered. She liked what Miss Brooks was teaching, but she also felt the pressure to fit in with her friends. It was becoming harder to balance both worlds. To help her students connect their assignments to real-life art, Emma arranged a trip to a contemporary art museum in the city. The museum showcased a range of pieces, from classical to modern, each challenging viewer to think beyond the usual. As they entered the museum, Emma noticed how quiet the students were, their eyes wide with curiosity and, for some, hesitation. Remember, she told them, you don't have to like everything here. Just see how each piece makes you feel. Try to figure out what it's saying. Emma led them through the galleries, pausing at various pieces. Some students seemed intrigued, particularly Layla, who took her time studying each work, her expression thoughtful. Emma felt a spark of pride, sensing that Layla was beginning to embrace this new way of seeing art. After the tour, they gathered in a small workshop room where Emma encouraged them to discuss what they'd seen. Layla spoke up, her voice more confident than usual. It's weird, seeing art that's not just pretty pictures, but ideas. It's like some of the pieces are trying to say something, she said, her tone filled with wonder. Emma nodded, beaming. Exactly, Layla. Art is a language all its own. Sometimes it's not about beauty. It's about making people think. Some students murmured in agreement, while others, like Sarah and Laura, looked away, disinterested. But Emma could feel a shift, small but present, in the way they engaged with her words. Back in the classroom, Emma approached Layla, sensing that she had something on her mind. Layla, can I talk to you for a minute? Layla nodded, following Emma to her desk. Emma handed her a brochure for a top university with a renowned art and law program. I wanted to give this to you, Emma said, her tone encouraging. You mentioned being interested in law, and I thought you might consider applying to a program like this. Layla's eyes widened in surprise. But I don't know. My family expects me to marry after school. They wouldn't really understand me going off to some big school. Emma's expression softened. It's your life, Layla. You have so much potential, and I don't want you to give up on something you're passionate about. You could have both, a fulfilling career and a family. They're not mutually exclusive. Layla looked down, visibly torn. I just don't know if I could make them understand. Emma smiled, placing a supportive hand on Layla's shoulder. All I ask is that you think about it. You have the potential to do great things, Layla. Don't be afraid to explore every possibility. As the deadline for the assignment approached, Layla grew more excited about her project. Inspired by what she'd seen at the museum, she created a collage that reflected the tensions between tradition and individuality. The piece was bold, filled with clashing colors and overlapping images, each representing a different aspect of her world. On the day the projects were due, Emma encouraged each student to present their work and share the inspiration behind it. When it was Layla's turn, she hesitated, glancing nervously at her friends before stepping forward. This is a reflection of me, she began, her voice shaking slightly. It's about feeling torn between what I want and what's expected of me. Ms. Brooks taught me that it's okay to express things that don't fit neatly, and this is my attempt to do that. Emma watched Layla with pride as she shared her work. The room was silent, with a few students visibly moved by Layla's honesty. It was a small victory, but Emma knew it was significant. After class, Layla stayed behind, her face glowing with newfound confidence. Thank you, Miss Brooks, she whispered, for helping me see that it's okay to be different. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Layla, you're already becoming a person you can be proud of. Keep that courage alive. A few days later, Emma was called to the principal's office once again. Principal Landon looked concerned as he handed her a letter from a parent, voicing concerns about the influence Emma was having on their children. "These parents feel you're encouraging students to challenge traditional values," he explained, his tone cautious. "I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's causing some unrest." Emma held the letter, feeling the weight of the resistance around her. But instead of backing down, she looked up, determined. "Gary, I know my approach is different, but isn't education about encouraging growth? I'm just trying to help them see their potential." Gary sighed, nodding slightly. "I understand, Emma. Just be careful. Change doesn't always come easily in a place like this." Emma left his office with a mix of emotions. The resistance was stronger than she anticipated, but so was her resolve. For students like Layla, she knew she couldn't stop now. One morning, Emma noticed an unusual event unfolding in the school auditorium. Students were gathered in small groups, some with notebooks open, while a guest speaker addressed them from the podium. Curious, Emma approached Principal Landon, who was watching from the doorway. "What's going on in there?" she asked, her tone casual but interested. Gary glanced at her, an understanding smile on his face. "It's our annual etiquette workshop. We bring in speakers to guide students, particularly the girls, on practical skills. Things like social etiquette, and in some cases, preparing for family life." Emma felt a pang of discomfort, but kept her expression neutral. "And the students participate every year?" Gary nodded. "It's been a tradition for as long as I can remember. Many parents see it as essential to preparing their daughters for a respectable future." Emma forced a smile, but inwardly she felt a surge of frustration. In her mind, education should empower students to explore careers and pursue ambitions, not limit them to a single path. This tradition ran counter to everything she believed, yet she knew she had to tread carefully. That afternoon, Emma noticed Layla lingering near her desk after class. The girl looked anxious, as if wrestling with something on her mind. "Is everything all right, Layla?" Emma asked gently. Layla glanced around, then nodded. "Yes, Miss Brooks. I was just thinking about that etiquette workshop." She hesitated, her brow furrowing. "I mean, it's fine, but sometimes I wonder if I could do something different, you know?" Emma saw the conflict in Layla's eyes and offered an encouraging smile. "Layla, you have so much potential. There's nothing wrong with tradition, but you shouldn't feel bound by it. Have you ever thought about pursuing your interest in law more seriously?" Layla looked down, visibly torn. "My mom always tells me that a good marriage is the most important thing. My friends think so too. They just don't get why I'd even think about law school." Emma's heart went out to her. She could sense Layla's frustration and desire for something beyond what was expected. "You can honor your family's values and still build a future that reflects who you are. It's not one or the other." Layla looked up, her expression softened. "You really think I could do both?" Emma nodded. "Absolutely. It might take courage, but I believe in you, Layla. Whatever you choose, just make sure it's what you want." A week later, Emma handed Layla a brochure for a nearby university known for its law program. "Take a look at this," Emma suggested as she placed the brochure in Layla's hands. "I know it's a big step, but I thought this program might interest you." Layla's eyes widened as she scanned the pages. "It's incredible, Ms. Brooks, but I don't know if I'm ready for something like this." Emma smiled, her tone gentle but firm. "I think you're readier than you realize, and you don't have to decide right now. Just keep it in mind." Layla clutched the brochure, a new light in her eyes. "Thank you, Miss Brooks. I'll think about it." Not long after, Layla's classmates began to take notice of her growing interest in Emma's ideas. During lunch one day, Sarah and Laura approached her, their expressions a mixture of concern and irritation. "Layla, what's going on with you?" Sarah asked, her tone tense. "Ever since you started listening to Ms. Brooks, you've been acting different." Layla shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at her tray. "I'm just trying to figure out what I want." "There's nothing wrong with that, right?" Laura scoffed, crossing her arms. "But why all this talk about law school? You know what everyone else is planning after graduation. It's not like you need to prove anything." Layla felt a mix of frustration and sadness. Her friends didn't understand that she wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just trying to find herself. "I know what everyone else is doing, but I just want to explore my options." Sarah sighed, looking exasperated. "You're changing, Layla, and it feels like you're just following whatever Ms. Brooks says." Layla took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Maybe it's not about following anyone. Maybe it's about discovering what I want." Her friends looked at her in disbelief, as if she'd just revealed something shocking. Layla's heart ached at their reactions, but she knew that she couldn't ignore her own aspirations. She left the cafeteria that day feeling more alone than ever, but also more determined to follow her own path. The following week, a new issue of the school magazine appeared in the hallways. Emma picked up a copy, her eyes drawn to an article written by Laura titled "Preserving Our Values." As she skimmed the article, Emma felt a familiar pang. Laura's words were carefully written, but they carried an accusatory tone. She described how the school's traditions were being challenged by ideas that encouraged students to stray from the path set by their families and community. Although the article didn't mention Emma by name, it was clear that she was the target. Her teaching methods and focus on individual expression had stirred resentment among students like Laura, who viewed her as a threat to their way of life. Principal Landon approached her later that day, a concerned expression on his face. "Emma, I'm aware of the article. The parents and some faculty members have expressed concern. They feel you're pushing a bit too hard against tradition." Emma took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I understand, Gary, but education should encourage students to think for themselves, to see their potential beyond the roles expected of them." Gary nodded, his expression conflicted. "I know, Emma, and I support you. But this community, they value stability. Try to find a balance, all right?" Emma agreed, but deep down, she knew she couldn't compromise her beliefs. Layla's newfound independence and desire for education were proof that her approach could make a difference. That evening, Layla sat alone in her room, the university brochure on her desk. She'd received a letter of interest from the school, encouraging her to apply, and Emma had helped her with the first steps. But her mind was clouded with doubt. Her mother knocked gently on the door, stepping inside with a warm but concerned expression. "Layla, I've noticed you've been busy with all these college applications. I thought you were planning to focus on finding a good husband after graduation." Layla swallowed, feeling the weight of her mother's expectations. "I know, Mom, but I just want to see if I could do more with my life." Her mother sighed, shaking her head. "You know our family values, Layla. A strong marriage is the foundation of a good life. Your father and I only want what's best for you." Layla nodded, her heart heavy. "I understand, but I need to figure out who I am first." Her mother left, leaving Layla alone with her thoughts. She felt torn between her family's wishes and the path she'd glimpsed through Emma's guidance. For the first time, she realized that her journey might mean breaking away from the life her family envisioned for her. After receiving multiple concerns from parents and staff, Principal Landon called Emma into his office for a final conversation. The weight of community expectations was bearing down on him, and he looked weary as he addressed her. "Emma, I understand what you're trying to do, and believe me, I respect it. But it's creating too much friction. I have to ask you to keep your lessons strictly within the curriculum. No more additional projects. No more encouraging students to challenge the path we've set for them." Emma felt a surge of disappointment. She had seen students like Layla begin to embrace their potential, but now she was being asked to pull back. The realization was a bitter one, but she knew it was the only way to stay at the school. She looked at Gary, her voice steady. "If I'm forced to compromise on what I believe education should be, then I don't think I can stay." Gary nodded solemnly, his eyes sympathetic. "I understand, Emma. You're a wonderful teacher, and I'm sorry it came to this." With a heavy heart, Emma prepared to leave the school, writing farewell letters to each of her students. She poured her hopes and encouragement into every word, knowing that her words might be the last pieces of guidance they'd receive from her. The day Emma left, Layla found the letter on her desk, carefully folded and written in Emma's neat handwriting. She read it slowly, each sentence filled with Emma's words of encouragement. urging her to pursue her dreams and think beyond the limits others placed on her. As Layla read, her heart swelled with a mix of sadness and determination. She realized that Emma's influence had changed her forever. She didn't have to follow anyone's path but her own. With renewed resolve, Layla decided she would apply to law school and pursue the future she had envisioned, honoring Emma's lessons and carrying forward her legacy of courage and independence. A week after Emma's departure, Layla sat in her bedroom, Emma's farewell letter beside her. She'd read it so many times she almost had it memorized. Remember, Layla, that you are capable of greatness. Your path is yours alone, and you deserve to see where it leads. Have the courage to follow it. Layla traced her finger over the words, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Inspired by Emma's encouragement, she sat down and began filling out the law school application Emma had encouraged her to consider. Every word she wrote, every question she answered, felt like a step toward the future she'd always quietly dreamed of. But as she hit submit on her application, a weight settled over her. She knew this choice might mean sacrificing the comfort of her friendships and the expectations of her family. The next day, Layla met Sarah and Laura in the school cafeteria. The conversation started light, but Laura soon shifted the tone, her expression serious. "Layla, are you really serious about this law school thing?" Laura asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Layla nodded cautiously. "Yes, I am. I want to see what's out there beyond what we've always been told." Sarah sighed, her face drawn. "But Layla, think about everything we've planned. We're all going to settle down, build families. That's what we're supposed to do. It's our tradition." Layla swallowed, feeling the sting of their words. "I'm not rejecting that. I just want to find out if there's more to life for me personally. Maybe we all have different paths." Laura shook her head, looking hurt. "Mrs. Brooks put all these ideas in your head. She changed you. I miss the old Layla." Layla's heart ached, but she held her ground. "Maybe I've changed, but that doesn't mean I'm abandoning you. I'm just trying to discover who I am." The table fell silent, her friends exchanging glances of disappointment. Layla felt the isolation creeping in, but beneath it was a flicker of strength she hadn't known before. She realized that finding her voice meant risking things she'd taken for granted. That evening, Layla sat down with her parents for dinner, nerves swirling in her stomach. She knew it was only a matter of time before her decision came up. "So, your mother tells me you've been busy with college applications," her father said, raising an eyebrow. Layla nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes, I'm interested in law school. I want to pursue it seriously." Her mother's face fell, and her father sighed, setting down his fork. "Layla, we're proud of you, but we hoped you'd stay here, close to home." "A career in law? It's a demanding life, not always compatible with family?" Layla took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I know it'll be hard, but I want to try. I'm not saying I don't want a family someday. I just need to see where this path takes me." Her mother reached across the table, taking her hand. "Honey, we love you, and we want you to be happy. But we also don't want you to regret going against everything we value. A family is a blessing." Layla nodded, feeling the tug of loyalty to her parents' wishes. But Emma's words echoed in her mind, reminding her that it was okay to choose her own path. "I'll think about it," she promised, offering them a small smile. That night, Layla lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the weight of her family's expectations and her dreams. The next day, as she walked through the school halls, Layla noticed classmates glancing at her, whispering. She felt the judgment in their eyes, a collective disapproval she hadn't anticipated. Rumors had spread about her law school application, her departure from tradition. As she entered the art classroom, now assigned to a new teacher who followed a standard curriculum, she couldn't help but feel Emma's absence keenly. The room felt colder, stripped of the vibrant discussions and inspiration Emma had brought. Layla found herself visiting the art supply closet, a space where she and Emma had often chatted after class. Now, standing alone among the paints and canvases, Layla felt the weight of loneliness. The journey she'd embarked on seemed daunting, but she reminded herself that she was stronger than the doubts pressing down on her. Later that week, Layla was surprised to find Principal Landon waiting outside her last class. He offered her a kind smile and motioned for her to join him in his office. "I wanted to check in with you," he began as they sat down. "I know Emma's departure had an impact on you. How are you holding up?" Layla hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but she felt a sense of relief in his understanding expression. "It's been difficult. Miss Brooks encouraged me to see things differently. But now, I feel like everyone's against me." Gary nodded thoughtfully. "Change can be uncomfortable, especially in a place that values tradition as much as we do. But Emma saw something special in you, and I think she'd be proud of how you're staying true to yourself." Layla blinked, surprised by his words. She had expected him to discourage her, to try to convince her to stay within the boundaries everyone else wanted. "Thank you, Principal Landon," she said, her voice soft. "I just wish it wasn't so hard to be different." Gary nodded, his expression warm. "Every worthwhile path has challenges. Remember that Emma's influence is still with you, even if she's no longer here." Layla left his office feeling a renewed sense of strength, comforted by the knowledge that, even in this traditional setting, there were people who believed in her journey. Days later, Layla received her first rejection letter from a law school. Her heart sank as she read the words, disappointment flooding through her. After all her courage and hard work, the road forward suddenly seemed uncertain. That evening, as she sat in her room, staring at the letter, doubt crept in. Maybe her friends and family were right. Maybe she wasn't cut out for this path. But as she sat there, Emma's letter resurfaced in her mind, her former teacher's voice echoing, "Have the courage to follow your path, no matter the obstacles." With renewed resolve, Layla pulled out a notebook and began planning her next steps. She would apply to more schools, explore scholarships, and find ways to strengthen her application. She wouldn't let a single rejection determine her future. Over the next few weeks, Layla poured herself into her goals, balancing her studies with her law school applications. She faced disapproving looks, whispered criticisms, and even her own moments of self-doubt. But each time, she remembered Emma's words, finding strength in the lessons her teacher had instilled. As graduation approached, Layla stood a little taller, her confidence growing with each step she took toward her dreams. She realized that while Emma was no longer physically there, her influence had left a profound mark. During a quiet moment before her final class, Layla visited the art room one last time. Standing alone in the familiar space, she felt a surge of gratitude for the woman who had shown her that it was okay to challenge the expectations of others, to trust in herself. She took a deep breath, a smile breaking across her face. She was ready. On the day of graduation, Layla received a letter in the mail, a letter of acceptance from a law school. Her heart soared as she read it, her hard work finally paying off. She'd taken the risk, faced the judgment of her peers and family, and found her path. After the ceremony, she found Principal Landon, who congratulated her warmly. "I know Emma would be incredibly proud of you," he said, his voice full of encouragement. "She always believed you'd do great things." Layla nodded, her heart full of gratitude and pride. She had honored Emma's influence, stepping into a future that reflected her own dreams. She had faced the pushback, the doubts, and the losses, emerging stronger and more certain of who she was meant to be. As she walked away, diploma in hand, she knew that Emma's teachings would guide her through every challenge yet to come. Layla was no longer the quiet girl who followed others' expectations. She was someone with her own voice, her own dreams, and she was ready to pursue them with all the courage and determination Emma had helped her discover. The day Layla stepped onto the law school campus, she felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. The imposing red brick buildings, the hum of conversation, and the sight of students with armloads of books made her heart race. Everything felt bigger, faster, and more intense than anything she had known back home. As she walked through the bustling campus, she overheard snippets of discussions about politics, social justice, and global issues, conversations she had rarely encountered in her small-town life. It was overwhelming but thrilling. This was the world Emma had spoken of, a place where ideas could flow freely and differences of opinion were respected. Taking a deep breath, Layla headed toward her first class, her mind buzzing with anticipation. The classroom was packed when Layla arrived, her stomach tightening as she found a seat in the back. Her professor, Dr. Allen, was a sharp, dynamic woman whose voice carried authority and warmth. The first lecture was an introduction to the rigorous demands of law school, with an emphasis on critical thinking and intellectual independence. "The law isn't just about facts, Dr. Allen said. It's about learning to understand perspectives, to advocate for justice, and to question the very structure of society. Here, we're not just looking for answers. We're asking the right questions." Layla's heart leapt at these words. This was exactly what she had longed for. A place where thinking differently was encouraged. But as the lecture progressed, she also realized the academic intensity. Students around her seemed well-versed in advanced concepts, and she worried about her ability to keep up. At the end of class, Layla felt a wave of doubt. Maybe she wasn't ready for this. But she recalled Emma's encouragement, urging her to step into the unknown with courage. She took a deep breath, gathering her resolve. This was just the beginning. In her second week, Layla found herself in the campus coffee shop, poring over case studies. A fellow student, Rachel, approached her, a friendly smile on her face. "Mind if I join you?" Rachel asked, setting her coffee down. Layla nodded, grateful for the company. The two struck up a conversation, sharing stories about their backgrounds. Rachel was from New York, with an interest in civil rights law, and she was fascinated by Layla's small-town upbringing and her journey to law school. "You know, it takes a lot of guts to break away from tradition like that," Rachel said, her voice full of admiration. "Most people don't have the courage to do what you did." Layla smiled, her heart swelling. "It was hard, but I had a teacher who believed in me. She taught me that it's okay to be different, to want more." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "Well, that's why we're here, right? To figure out who we are and what we want to fight for." Layla felt a renewed sense of belonging, realizing that in this place she could find allies and friends who understood her struggle. For the first time, she didn't feel like the odd one out. She was part of a community of thinkers, each on their own journey. As the semester progressed, Layla was immersed in challenging coursework. The volume of reading, the intricacy of the legal concepts, and the relentless pace often left her exhausted. Her days became a blur of lectures, library sessions, and late nights spent poring over cases. One evening, after a particularly grueling study session, Layla felt a wave of frustration. She had been staring at the same legal document for hours, struggling to understand its nuances. Despite her best efforts, the material felt foreign, and she began to doubt her capabilities. In her mind, she heard the voices of her friends and family back home, questioning why she had chosen this path. The weight of their disapproval lingered, mixing with her own fears of inadequacy. But then she remembered Emma's words. "It's okay to struggle. Growth comes from facing the hard things." Releasing a shaky breath, Layla pushed herself to keep going, reminding herself that she belonged here, even if the journey was harder than she'd anticipated. One afternoon, Layla received a letter from her mother. She hesitated, knowing that her mother's disapproval had been a point of tension. Taking a deep breath, she opened the envelope. "Layla, we miss you every day. Your father and I still worry about you being so far from home, especially in such a challenging field. But we're proud of you for following your dreams. We may not fully understand, but we love you, and we'll always be here if you need us." Layla felt tears prick her eyes as she read the words. Her family hadn't abandoned her. They were trying to understand, even if they couldn't fully see her vision. Their support, even if tentative, was enough to remind her that she was not entirely alone in this journey. With a renewed sense of purpose, Layla returned to her studies, bolstered by the knowledge that she had her family's support, however distant it may feel. During the midterm exams, Layla faced her biggest challenge yet. The exams were brutal, testing not only her memory, but her ability to think critically under pressure. As she handed in her last exam, she felt a mixture of relief and anxiety, unsure if she had done well. When she received her grades a week later, Layla felt a surge of pride. She hadn't been at the top of the class, but she had passed with solid marks, a testament to her hard work and perseverance. She realized that she was capable of succeeding here, even if it wasn't easy. That evening she found herself in the campus courtyard, reflecting on how far she'd come. Emma's belief in her, her family's tentative support, and her newfound friendships had all contributed to this moment. She was on her way, even if the road was long and challenging. Toward the end of her first semester, Dr. Allen approached Layla after class, inviting her to apply for a mentorship program for students interested in social justice law. The opportunity thrilled Layla, but it also intimidated her. "Why me?" she asked, feeling both excited and unworthy. "Doctor?" Allen smiled warmly. "You have a unique perspective, Layla. You're brave, and you have a story that resonates. I think you'd be an excellent addition to the program." With Dr. Allen's encouragement, Layla applied, hoping to use her background and personal journey as a foundation for her work. She felt a growing sense of purpose, understanding that her struggles weren't just obstacles, they were shaping her into the person she needed to become. At the end of the semester, Layla returned home for winter break, a little stronger and a lot wiser. She reunited with her family, sensing that while things had changed, the bond between them remained. During a quiet moment, Layla visited Emma's old classroom, now empty and silent. She stood by the window, looking out over the campus, feeling Emma's presence with her. In that moment, she knew she had found her purpose. Not just in law, but in advocating for those whose voices were often unheard. She left the classroom with a smile, feeling Emma's guidance and strength within her. Layla was no longer a girl caught between tradition and ambition. She was a young woman forging her own path, grounded by the lessons of the past and inspired by the possibilities of the future. As she looked toward the horizon, Layla knew that her journey was only beginning. She had many battles yet to face, but she was ready. She was ready to honor Emma's legacy by living boldly, by believing in herself, and by helping others find their own paths as she had found hers. Layla's second semester began with a sense of purpose as she joined the mentorship program Dr. Allen had encouraged her to pursue. On her first day in the program, Layla was paired with a third-year student, Marcus, who would guide her through the basics of legal advocacy and help her adjust to the demands of social justice law. "So," Marcus began as they sat in a small, sunlit study room, "what brings you to this field? There are easier ways to make a living, you know." Layla hesitated, but then she felt a swell of courage. "I grew up in a small town where people believed in tradition above all else, but I had a teacher who showed me that life didn't have to fit into a box. She taught me that my voice mattered. Now, I want to use that voice to help people who feel like they don't have one." Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's a powerful motivation. This field will test you, but if you're passionate, you'll find it worth every challenge." Their conversation fueled Layla's sense of purpose, strengthening her resolve to follow the path Emma had encouraged her to take. She was learning not only to stand up for herself, but also to advocate for others. Layla's first assignment in the mentorship program was to work with a team of law students on a mock trial, advocating for a fictional client facing housing discrimination. As she dove into the research, Layla felt a powerful connection to the cause, driven by memories of people in her hometown whose voices were often ignored. During a team meeting, Layla hesitantly shared her insights. "I think we should highlight how systemic biases can prevent people from having fair access to housing. Sometimes people are forced into unfair situations because of assumptions or prejudices they can't control." Her words were met with nods of agreement, and her confidence grew as her teammates supported her ideas. Layla felt a thrill of purpose, realizing that she was finding her voice not just for herself, but for others who needed someone to advocate for them. As Layla grew more involved in her studies and mentorship work, the demands began to weigh on her. The late nights, the complex cases, and the pressure to succeed felt overwhelming at times. She often thought about her family, wondering if they would understand the sacrifices she was making to pursue her dreams. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Layla called her mother, seeking comfort. "Mom," she said, her voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and longing. "It's harder than I imagined. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing." Her mother's voice softened. "Layla, we may not fully understand this path you're on, but we know you have a strong heart. Remember, challenges make us stronger. Just know that whatever happens, we're proud of you." Her mother's words gave Layla a renewed sense of strength. She knew that even if her family didn't fully understand her dreams, they were supporting her in their own way. As part of the mentorship program, Layla was invited to speak at a student event on campus. The theme was Finding Your Voice, and the thought of sharing her story in front of others both terrified and thrilled her. On the day of the event, Layla stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of her peers. She took a deep breath, recalling the journey that had brought her here. "I grew up in a place where tradition was everything," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "But I had a teacher who showed me that I didn't have to follow the path others laid out for me. She taught me that my dreams mattered, even if they didn't fit with everyone else's expectations." Layla shared her journey, from her small-town upbringing to the struggles she'd faced in law school. She spoke of Emma's influence and the courage it took to pursue her own future. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause, and Layla felt a surge of pride. After the event, a few students approached her, expressing how her story had resonated with them. Layla realized that sharing her experiences could inspire others to overcome their own fears and follow their dreams. It was a moment of validation, reinforcing her commitment to her path. As Layla's involvement in social justice causes grew, not everyone was supportive. A classmate named Andrew often challenged her perspectives in class, questioning her commitment to what he called idealistic views. During a class discussion on fair housing, Andrew smirked as Layla presented her argument. "It's nice to have such an optimistic view of things, Layla, but the real world isn't that simple. People have to work with the system as it is." Layla felt her cheeks flush, but refused to back down. "The system may be flawed, but that doesn't mean we should accept it. If we don't challenge biases, who will?" Her classmates watched as she held her ground, impressed by her confidence. Dr. Allen gave her a nod of encouragement, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. Afterward, Layla received messages from a few classmates who shared her passion for justice. The experience showed her that she could stand up to criticism and that her voice was gaining respect. She realized that standing strong meant facing opposition, but it also meant building resilience. One afternoon, Layla received an unexpected letter in the mail. The handwriting was familiar, and her heart leapt when she realized it was from Emma. She opened it eagerly, her hands trembling slightly. "Dear Layla, I've heard through the grapevine that you're doing incredible things. I always knew you would. Remember, the journey won't always be easy, but every step you take is one that will inspire others. Keep pushing forward and never doubt your worth. With pride, Emma." The letter brought tears to Layla's eyes. Emma's words were a reminder of the belief that had driven her all this way, the voice that had lifted her out of doubt and into her own strength. She tucked the letter into her notebook, carrying it with her as a reminder of the path she was on. As Layla approached her final year, she reflected on how far she'd come since her first days on campus. She was no longer the uncertain girl trying to find her way. She was now a young woman with a clear sense of purpose. Her dedication to justice had given her direction, and her experiences had strengthened her. She continued to stay in touch with her family, whose support had grown over time, even if they didn't always fully understand her ambitions. They were proud of her resilience, and that pride gave her the courage to push forward, even in the face of challenges. Layla felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey she'd taken. She'd faced judgment, self-doubt, and criticism, but each obstacle had made her stronger. She knew that her future would hold even more challenges, but she felt prepared, grounded by the lessons Emma had instilled in her. As she prepared for graduation, Layla organized an event in Emma's honor. The gathering brought together students and faculty who had known Emma or been impacted by her teaching. At the event, Layla spoke, sharing how Emma's influence had shaped her journey and given her the courage to pursue her dreams. She encouraged the audience to remember the importance of self-discovery, resilience, and having the courage to stand for what they believed in. The event ended with a moment of silence in Emma's honor, and Layla felt a deep sense of peace. She knew that Emma's legacy would live on, not just through her, but through every person who had been touched by her lessons. Layla stepped into her new office for the first time, taking in the modest but welcoming space. The walls were lined with legal books, and a small plaque on her desk bore her name, Layla Simmons, Associate Attorney. She smiled, a surge of pride and nervous excitement welling up inside her. Her firm, Knight & Westbrook, was known for its work in housing and civil rights cases, which was exactly where Layla wanted to make an impact. As she met her colleagues and supervisors, she felt a sense of belonging, mixed with the pressure of proving herself in a field where results often required both grit and patience. Her supervising attorney, Carol Westbrook, was a sharp, accomplished woman in her 40s with a calm but firm demeanor. Carol welcomed Layla warmly, introducing her to the team and sharing a few encouraging words. "Welcome to the real world of law," Carol said with a smile. "We're thrilled to have you, Layla. I hear you have a strong passion for social justice. You'll fit right in here." Layla nodded, feeling both reassured and determined. This was her chance to turn her dreams into reality, to advocate for the voiceless and make a difference in people's lives. Layla's first assigned case was a housing discrimination case involving a single mother, Maria Rivera, who had been unfairly evicted from her apartment. Layla reviewed the case file thoroughly, her heart sinking as she read about Maria's experience. Maria had worked 2 jobs to provide for her children, yet she faced biased treatment based on her background and family situation. During her first meeting with Maria, Layla listened attentively as Maria shared her story, her voice filled with frustration and helplessness. "I just want a fair chance for my kids," Maria said, her voice breaking. "I've done everything I can, but people look at me like I don't belong." Layla felt a swell of empathy. She remembered her own journey and the challenges she had faced to find her place in the world. "Maria, we're here to fight for you," Layla assured her. "Everyone deserves a fair chance, and we're going to make sure you get one." The conversation left Layla deeply moved, and she vowed to give her best effort to help Maria find justice. Emma's influence guided her, reminding her that standing up for others was as much about listening as it was about legal work. As Layla dove deeper into Maria's case, she discovered that the landlord had connections within the city's legal system, making the case more complex than she initially expected. Layla's research revealed patterns of discrimination that were difficult to prove without clear evidence, but she was determined to uncover the truth. One afternoon, Layla presented her findings to Carol, who listened intently before giving her feedback. "You've done excellent work, Layla, but be prepared. This case might not end in a clean victory. Sometimes the law doesn't favor the people who need it most." Layla nodded, the weight of Carol's words settling heavily on her. She understood that not every case could be won, but she resolved to fight as hard as she could. Her conviction was unwavering. She knew that even small victories mattered, especially to clients like Maria. While working on the case, Layla attended a local community meeting organized by advocacy groups focused on housing rights. There, she met other lawyers, activists, and community members who were equally passionate about the cause. The meeting gave her a sense of camaraderie and purpose, reminding her that she wasn't fighting alone. After the meeting, Layla struck up a conversation with an older attorney named David, who had been working in housing law for decades. "You're young, but you've got fire," David said, smiling warmly. "It takes strength to keep going in this field, especially when the odds feel stacked against you." Layla nodded, grateful for his advice. "It can be overwhelming, but I'm committed. I want to honor the people who believed in me and do right by those who need help." David nodded thoughtfully. "Remember, every step you take matters. Even when change is slow, each case you fight helps pave the way for something better." The meeting reinforced Layla's resolve, reminding her that advocacy was a shared effort. She returned to her office the next day with renewed determination, ready to face the challenges ahead. As the case progressed, the landlord's attorney approached Layla with a settlement offer that would avoid a trial but came with conditions limiting Maria's future options for housing. Layla knew the settlement might be the best option for a quick resolution, but it felt like a compromise on justice. Carol reviewed the offer with Layla, her tone measured. Sometimes a settlement can be the most practical choice, but it's up to you and Maria to decide if it's right. Layla felt torn, knowing that Maria needed security but also deserved a fair fight. She met with Maria, explaining the pros and cons of the offer. "Maria, this settlement will give you some immediate relief, but it won't address the bigger issue of what happened. If we fight, it might be harder, but we'd be standing up to make sure this doesn't happen to others." Maria's eyes filled with emotion. "If fighting means making a difference, I want to do it. I want my kids to know we didn't just accept things as they were." The decision to move forward with the case was both challenging and empowering. Layla felt a sense of responsibility, but she also knew that pursuing justice was worth the risk. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Layla worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and preparing her arguments. She felt the weight of Maria's trust in her and was determined to give her best effort. During one late night in the office, Carol stopped by, her expression thoughtful. "Layla, you've put everything into this case. I want you to know that whatever happens, you've made a real impact. Maria knows that, and so do I." Layla felt a swell of gratitude, Carol's support giving her the encouragement she needed. She was no longer just a young attorney finding her way. She was an advocate, someone willing to fight for her clients with everything she had. On the day of the trial, Layla entered the courtroom with a mixture of nerves and determination. She presented Maria's case passionately, using every piece of evidence to show the discrimination Maria had faced. The landlord's attorney countered with aggressive arguments, but Layla held her ground, her voice unwavering. Maria sat beside her, watching with a look of hope and pride. Layla knew that win or lose, the fight mattered. She was standing up not just for Maria, but for every person who faced similar challenges. After closing arguments, Layla and Maria waited for the verdict. When the judge finally ruled in their favor, Layla felt a rush of relief and joy. They had won, not just for Maria, but for the principles of justice and equality. Following the trial, Maria hugged Layla, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Layla. You believed in me when no one else did. I'll never forget what you've done for us." Layla smiled, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. This victory was more than just a legal win. It was a testament to the strength of those who dared to fight for what was right. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey as an advocate. That evening, Layla reflected on her path, from her small-town upbringing to law school to this pivotal moment. Emma's influence remained a guiding light, shaping her values and fueling her determination to keep fighting for justice. As she looked out over the city skyline, Layla felt a sense of peace and purpose. She knew that her journey would continue to be challenging, but she was ready. She was ready to honor Emma's legacy by dedicating herself to a life of advocacy, empowering others, and standing strong in the face of adversity. Months after her victory in Maria's case, Layla's reputation began to grow. Her dedication to justice and her ability to connect with clients on a personal level earned her respect within the firm and recognition in the wider community. Colleagues referred to her as a rising star, and Layla often found herself invited to speak at local events and workshops on housing rights. One evening, Carol approached Layla with an invitation. "The city's holding a seminar on tenant advocacy next month, and they want you to be one of the keynote speakers. Your work has made a real difference, Layla. It's time others hear your story." Layla accepted with both excitement and nerves. She knew this was an opportunity to use her voice to inspire others and advocate for systemic change. As she prepared her speech, she reflected on her journey, determined to honor Emma's influence and the many people who had shaped her along the way. On the day of the seminar, Layla stood in front of an audience of law students, community leaders, and activists, each eager to hear her story. She took a deep breath, letting the memories of her journey wash over her. "I grew up in a place where following tradition was expected," she began, her voice steady. "But I had a teacher who encouraged me to think beyond those expectations. She taught me to value my own voice and to believe in the possibility of change. Today, I carry her lessons with me in every case I take." She shared the story of Maria's case, describing the challenges and rewards of fighting for justice. Her words resonated deeply, and as she looked out over the audience, she saw faces reflecting hope, determination, and gratitude. Afterward, several young lawyers approached her, expressing their admiration and asking for advice. Layla felt a profound sense of fulfillment, realizing that she was not only advocating for justice, but also inspiring others to join the fight. As Layla's influence grew, she began to mentor law students who shared her passion for social justice. One of her mentees, a young woman named Jenna, reminded her of herself, bright, idealistic, and sometimes uncertain in the face of opposition. During one of their mentoring sessions, Jenna confessed, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not strong enough for this. The problems seem so overwhelming." Layla smiled, remembering her own early days. "I used to feel the same way, but I learned that strength doesn't mean never being afraid. It means showing up, even when things are hard. Every small victory mattered, Jenna. Never underestimate the impact you can make." Jenna looked at her with newfound resolve, her eyes bright with determination. "Thank you, Layla. I'm ready to keep going." Layla felt a surge of pride, recognizing that she was passing on the same encouragement Emma had once given her. The cycle of mentorship, of lifting others up, had come full circle. That summer, Layla returned to her hometown for a family reunion. She hadn't visited in months, and while her parents supported her from afar, she sensed they still struggled to understand her work. But as she shared stories of her cases and her impact, she noticed a shift in their reactions. Her father listened intently, nodding with quiet pride, while her mother's eyes glistened with tears. "Layla, we may not fully understand everything you do, but we're so proud of you," her mother said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. "You've become someone truly remarkable." Layla's heart swelled with gratitude, and for the first time, she felt a full sense of acceptance from her family. She had honored her roots while following her own path, and now they saw the person she had become. One afternoon, Layla visited her old high school, where she found Emma's classroom empty but untouched. Standing in the familiar space, she felt a wave of nostalgia and gratitude. She remembered Emma's lessons, her encouragement, and the way she had believed in Layla when few others had. Taking a moment of quiet reflection, Layla felt Emma's presence, as if her former teacher were there, guiding her still. In that classroom, Layla made a silent promise to continue living with courage and integrity, carrying Emma's legacy forward. She left the school that day with a renewed commitment to her work, feeling Emma's inspiration as vividly as she had felt it years before. Back at work, Layla encountered a case that tested her values. Her client, a tenant in a gentrifying neighborhood, was being pressured out by a developer who wanted to turn the building into luxury apartments. The case was high profile, and the opposition had considerable resources. As she built her case, Layla encountered increasing resistance. The developer's lawyers attempted to discredit her client, casting doubt on the validity of the claims. Layla knew she had to find a way to advocate fiercely while remaining true to her values. Late one night, she confided in Carol, who had become both a mentor and friend. "This case feels impossible," Layla admitted, "but I know I have to keep fighting." Carol smiled, her voice filled with pride. "Remember, Layla, you're not just fighting for your client. You're fighting for everyone who deserves a fair chance. Even when the system feels stacked against you, know that your integrity and persistence make a difference." Layla nodded, her resolve strengthening. She understood that being an advocate meant facing difficult choices, but she was determined to honor the responsibility of her role. After months of intense work, Layla won the case for her client, securing a settlement that protected the tenant's rights. Though it was a compromise, it was a step forward. one that left an impact on the community and sent a message to those who would exploit vulnerable people. Her client thanked her with tears in her eyes, and Layla felt the familiar sense of fulfillment that came with making a difference, however small. She realized that even the hardest battles had moments of reward, and that each victory, no matter the size, was worth the fight. As Layla's career continued to grow, she became known not only for her legal expertise, but also for her compassion and commitment to justice. She was invited to speak at conferences, lead workshops, and even teach part-time at a local law school, where she mentored the next generation of advocates. One evening, after a long day at work, Layla received a message from a former mentee who had just won a significant case. The mentee thanked her for her guidance, sharing how Layla's support had made a difference in her journey. Reading the message, Layla felt Emma's legacy come full circle. She was now the mentor, the encourager, the advocate who believed in others just as Emma had believed in her. As she looked out over the city skyline, Layla felt at peace. She had found her path, her purpose, and her place in the world. And she knew that as long as she lived by the values Emma had instilled in her, she would continue making a difference, one step at a time. Layla's journey was far from over, but she was ready. She was ready to keep moving forward, carrying Emma's spirit and her own hard-earned wisdom with her into a future filled with possibilities. Years after her first days as an attorney, Layla now held a leadership role at Knight & Westbrook, overseeing a team of young lawyers and advocates. Her office was filled with reminders of the cases she had worked on, photographs of clients and community members, letters from those she had helped, and books from mentors who had inspired her along the way. One afternoon, Layla was approached by Mia, a recent hire with a fierce passion for justice. Mia was tackling her first case, a challenging housing discrimination suit that reminded Layla of her early days. "Layla, can I ask you something?" Mia said, her voice a mix of determination and nerves. "How do you stay strong in cases like this, when it feels like everything is against you?" Layla smiled, seeing a bit of herself in Mia's eyes. "It's not about never feeling the weight of the struggle," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "It's about remembering why you started. Each case, no matter how difficult, is a chance to stand up for someone who needs it. And even the smallest victory can mean the world to them." Mia nodded, her face brightening with renewed purpose. "Thank you, Layla. I'll remember that." Watching Mia walk away, Layla felt a surge of pride. She had become the mentor she'd once needed, guiding others as Emma had once guided her. Later that year, the school district planned a dedication ceremony to honor Emma's contributions as an educator. Layla was invited to speak, and she eagerly accepted, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the chance to honor the woman who had changed her life. On the day of the ceremony, Layla stood in front of a crowd gathered in the school auditorium, many of them former students and colleagues of Emma. A plaque with Emma's name and the inscription, "Inspiring Minds, Changing Lives," was mounted on the wall, a permanent reminder of her legacy. "Emma taught us more than just art," Layla began, her voice filled with emotion. "She taught us courage, resilience, and the power of believing in ourselves. She showed us that it's okay to dream beyond the limits set by others, to follow our paths even when they seem uncertain." As she continued, Layla shared her own journey, recounting how Emma's encouragement had set her on a path of self-discovery and advocacy. "Emma may no longer be with us, but her spirit lives on in everyone she touched, in every person who dares to think differently, who fights for what is right." The audience rose in applause, their hearts moved by Layla's tribute. In that moment, Layla felt Emma's presence, a warm reassurance that the lessons she had passed on would continue to inspire others for generations. After the ceremony, Layla took a quiet walk around the school grounds. She found herself back at Emma's old classroom, the door slightly ajar. Inside, a new art teacher was guiding a class, the walls lined with colorful artwork, reminders of Emma's enduring influence. Standing in the doorway, Layla reflected on the long journey she had taken. She remembered her own days as a student, the uncertainty, the doubts, and the dreams that Emma had helped bring to life. Her journey had come full circle, and she felt a sense of peace knowing that she was living out the legacy Emma had left behind. Layla left the school that day with a light heart, feeling connected to her past, her purpose, and her future. She knew that as long as she continued to inspire, to guide, and to advocate, Emma's legacy would live on, not just in her, but in every person she touched. Years passed, and Layla's dedication to justice remained as steadfast as ever. She continued her work, growing into a leader who was known not only for her legal expertise, but also for her compassion and empathy. Her work had become more than a career. It was a life of purpose, shaped by the lessons she had learned from Emma and the journey that had brought her here. One evening, Layla received a letter from Jenna, one of her former mentees who had just won a landmark case in housing rights. The letter expressed gratitude for Layla's guidance and shared how Jenna's victory had inspired others to take on similar cases. Reading the letter, Layla felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Emma's legacy had rippled through her life, passing from one generation to the next. Layla knew that she had honored that legacy by living fully, by daring to be different, and by helping others find the courage to do the same. As she looked out over the city she had come to call home, Layla felt a profound peace, knowing that Emma's influence would continue to shape lives long after her own journey had ended. She was no longer the girl seeking her voice. She was a woman who had found it, and she was ready to carry that voice forward, wherever life would lead her next. Years into her career, Layla took on a challenging pro bono case that deeply resonated with her. Her client, a young single mother named Naomi, was facing eviction due to unfair treatment by her landlord. The case reminded Layla of Maria's situation, one of her first clients, and it reignited her passion for justice. Naomi was shy and uncertain, nervous about standing up to the landlord. During their initial meeting, Layla noticed Naomi's apprehension and offered her a reassuring smile. "I know it feels overwhelming," Layla said gently, "but you're not alone in this. You deserve to be treated fairly, and I'll be with you every step of the way." As Layla worked on the case, she realized how much she had grown since her early days as an attorney. She was no longer navigating uncharted waters alone. She had built a solid foundation, a reputation, and a support system. And now, she was in a position to offer that same stability and reassurance to people like Naomi. When they won the case, Naomi hugged Layla with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't," she whispered. "I'll never forget this." Layla smiled, remembering Emma's unwavering belief in her. Helping Naomi felt like honoring Emma all over again, and it strengthened Layla's resolve to continue advocating for those who felt unheard and unseen. At night in Westbrook, Layla initiated a tradition called the Voices Project, an annual event where young advocates and community members shared stories of resilience and justice. The project aimed to empower those working in social justice and provide a platform for voices that were often marginalized. The first event was held in a packed conference hall where a diverse group of speakers, including former clients, young attorneys, and community leaders, took the stage to share their experiences. Layla herself opened the event, her voice filled with pride. "This project is dedicated to those who've taught us the importance of courage," she began. "It's for the teachers, mentors, and advocates who remind us that our voices matter, and it's for everyone who, despite challenges, dares to stand up for what is right." Layla's speech received a standing ovation, and as she looked out at the audience, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. This project was a testament to Emma's influence, a way of giving back to the community that had shaped her. Layla knew that, through the Voices Project, Emma's legacy would continue inspiring new generations to pursue justice and equality. Later that year, Layla's parents visited her in the city for the first time, eager to see the life she had built. They toured her office, where her mother took note of the plaques and awards lining the walls, each representing a milestone Layla had achieved. "You've built something beautiful here," her father said, pride shining in his eyes. "I never understood why you had to go so far, but now I see you were meant for this." Layla felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by her parents' acceptance. She realized how far she had come, not only in her career, but in earning her family's understanding and support. Her mother smiled, holding Layla's hand. "Your teacher would be so proud of you." "We are too." Layla hugged them tightly, feeling an immense gratitude for the journey that had led her to this moment. She had found her place in the world, and her parents' pride was the final piece that completed her sense of belonging. One day, Layla received an invitation from her alma mater's law school, offering her a position as an adjunct professor for a course on housing rights and advocacy. It was an unexpected opportunity, and though Layla was nervous about stepping into a teaching role, she felt it was a fitting way to honor Emma's legacy. During her first lecture, she shared her journey with the students, emphasizing the importance of integrity, resilience, and empathy in the field of law. "As advocates, our role isn't just to win cases," she told them. "It's to give a voice to those who feel they have none, to empower them, and to remind them that they matter. That's what my mentor taught me, and it's a lesson I carry with me in every case I take." The students listened intently, and Layla could see the impact her words had on them. She realized that teaching was not only a way to share her knowledge, but also a chance to inspire others, as Emma had inspired her. After class, several students approached her, eager to discuss their own dreams of pursuing social justice. Layla felt a sense of pride, knowing that Emma's lessons would live on through these young advocates. One quiet evening, after a long day of work and teaching, Layla found herself reflecting on her journey. She opened a drawer and pulled out Emma's farewell letter, the edges worn from years of handling. She read the familiar words, feeling the same warmth and encouragement that had guided her since the beginning. "Remember, Layla, you are capable of greatness. Your path is yours alone, and you deserve to see where it leads. Have the courage to follow it." Layla smiled, feeling Emma's presence with her even now. She knew that no matter where life took her, she would continue to honor Emma's legacy by living with courage, empathy, and integrity. The years had brought challenges and triumphs, doubts and victories, but through it all, Layla had stayed true to herself. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her place in the world. And in doing so, she had kept Emma's spirit alive, passing on her mentor's wisdom to a new generation of dreamers and fighters. As she looked out over the city skyline, Layla felt a deep peace settle within her. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and she knew that Emma's legacy would continue to guide her, lighting the way for all who dared to believe in the power of their own voices. If you enjoyed Layla's journey and want to hear more stories about courage, mentorship, and finding your voice, make sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Each story brings new characters, challenges, and victories that inspire and remind us of the power of following our own path. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to share more stories with you.